You know that sinking feeling when you're standing at the grocery store checkout, your cart full of necessities, and your debit card gets declined. Your face turns red as other customers start staring, and you mumble something about the bank making a mistake while frantically checking your phone to see what went wrong with your account. Or maybe you've experienced that moment when your friend casually mentions they just maxed out their retirement contribution for the year, and you realize you have absolutely no idea what that even means, let alone how much you should be saving. Perhaps you felt that knot in your stomach when someone starts talking about compound interest or credit scores and you just nod along pretending to understand while secretly wondering why nobody ever taught you this stuff when it actually mattered. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to admit. Our education system has completely failed us when it comes to money. We can recite the periodic table and solve complex algebraic equations, but we graduate into the real world without the slightest clue about how to manage our finances. We're sent into adulthood armed with knowledge about the Napoleonic Wars, but completely defenseless against credit card debt and student loans. It's like teaching someone to drive by explaining the internal combustion engine while never actually letting them touch the steering wheel. What I've discovered will probably make you angry at the education system and maybe even angrier at yourself for not learning this sooner. But here's the thing that should give you hope. Everything you're about to learn could have been taught in a single semester of high school, and it would have changed the entire trajectory of your financial life. If you're someone who's tired of feeling confused and overwhelmed every time money comes up in conversation, if you want to finally understand how wealthy people actually think about money, and if you're ready to build real financial security instead of just hoping everything works out, make sure to subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. We're going to cover 50 years worth of financial wisdom in the next 50 minutes, and I guarantee some of this information will fundamentally change how you think about money forever. Before we dive into the specific strategies and concepts that should have been mandatory curriculum, let me share something that might shock you about the current state of financial literacy in America. The statistics are absolutely devastating, and they explain why so many people feel lost when it comes to money. For 8 consecutive years, financial literacy rates in the United States have hovered around 50%. That means half of all Americans lack basic financial knowledge. But it gets worse. The percentage of adults with poor financial literacy has actually increased from 20% in 2017 to 25% in 2023. Think about what this means in practical terms. 1 out of every 4 people you encounter lacks fundamental financial knowledge. They don't understand how credit scores work, they've never heard of compound interest, and they have no idea how much money they need for retirement. These aren't just abstract statistics. These are real people making life-altering financial decisions based on guesswork and misinformation. They're signing mortgage documents they don't understand, choosing retirement plans without knowing what they're investing in, and accumulating debt without realizing the long-term consequences. The generational breakdown of financial literacy reveals an even more troubling trend. Baby boomers and the silent generation have the highest financial literacy rates at 55%. Meanwhile, Generation Z has the lowest rate at only 38%. This creates a bizarre situation where the people who have the most time to benefit from good financial decisions possess the least knowledge about how to make them. Young adults are entering the workforce with decades of potential compound growth ahead of them, yet they're completely unprepared to take advantage of these opportunities. Here's what makes this situation even more tragic. The cost of financial illiteracy isn't just personal embarrassment or mild inconvenience. According to the National Financial Educators Council, gaps in financial literacy cost Americans an average of over $1,000 annually. Nearly 9% of Americans report that their lack of financial knowledge has cost them more than $10,000. These aren't small mistakes that you can laugh off later. These are life-changing financial errors that compound over decades. But the real kicker is this. Generation Z shows a stronger interest in personal finance education than any previous generation, with 30% enrolling in personal finance courses compared to 20% for millennials and only 7% for baby boomers. They want to learn about money, they recognize its importance, yet they're still graduating with the lowest financial literacy rates in history. This tells us that the problem isn't lack of interest or motivation. The problem is that our educational approach to financial literacy is fundamentally broken. Now, you might be wondering why schools don't teach practical money management. The answer reveals something disturbing about how our education system prioritizes information. Academic institutions focus on theoretical knowledge that sounds impressive but has limited real-world application. They'll spend months teaching you about the Revolutionary War, which happened over 200 years ago and has zero impact on your daily life. But they won't spend a single day explaining how compound interest could make you wealthy or how credit card debt could destroy your financial future. The irony is that financial literacy directly impacts every other aspect of education and career success. Students who understand money management are less likely to drop out of college due to financial stress. They make better decisions about student loans and career choices. They're more likely to start businesses, invest in additional education, and take calculated risks that lead to higher income. Financial literacy isn't just about money. It's about creating options and opportunities that improve every area of life. Think about the ripple effects of financial illiteracy on society as a whole. When people don't understand basic financial concepts, they make poor decisions that affect not just themselves but their families and communities. They fall victim to predatory lending practices. They fail to save for emergencies, making them vulnerable to financial shocks. They don't invest in retirement accounts, creating a future crisis where millions of elderly Americans lack adequate savings. They accumulate high-interest debt that keeps them trapped in cycles of financial stress. This brings us to the first fundamental concept that should have been taught in every high school in America. And it's something so powerful that understanding it alone could change your entire financial trajectory. I'm talking about compound interest, which Albert Einstein supposedly called the eighth wonder of the world. Whether Einstein actually said that is debatable, but the sentiment is absolutely correct. Compound interest is the mathematical principle that separates people who build wealth from people who struggle financially their entire lives. Most people think about money in linear terms. They assume that saving $10,000 gets them exactly $10,000 closer to their financial goals. They imagine wealth building as a steady, predictable process where each dollar saved has equal value, regardless of when it's saved. This kind of thinking is exactly why so many people give up on investing before they ever see meaningful results. They look at their small account balance after a few years and think the process is too slow to make any real difference. But compound interest doesn't work linearly. It works exponentially, creating a snowball effect that accelerates over time. Every dollar you invest starts earning returns, and then those returns start earning their own returns. The gains from previous years become the foundation for even larger gains in future years. This creates a mathematical phenomenon where small amounts invested early can outperform much larger amounts invested later. Let me give you a concrete example that will demonstrate just how powerful this concept really is. Imagine two people, Sarah and Mike, who both decide to invest for retirement. Sarah starts investing $200 per month at age 25, earning an average annual return of 8%. Mike waits until age 35 to start investing the same amount at the same return rate. Both continue investing until age 65. So Sarah invests for 40 years, while Mike invests for 30 years. At retirement, Sarah has contributed $96,000 of her own money over 4 decades. Mike has contributed $72,000 over 3 decades. Based on linear thinking, you might expect Sarah to have about $24,000 more than Mike at retirement, since she contributed $24,000 more. But compound interest tells a completely different story. Sarah's account balance at age 65 is approximately $622,000. Mike's balance is only about $262,000. Even though Sarah only contributed $24,000 more than Mike, she ends up with $360,000 more at retirement. That 10-year head start was worth more than $250,000 because of compound interest. This example illustrates why financial education should emphasize starting early, even with small amounts. The person who begins investing modest amounts in their 20s will almost always outperform someone who waits until their 30s or 40s to start investing larger amounts. Time in the market consistently beats timing the market or trying to make up for lost time with bigger contributions later. The Rule of 72 provides a simple mental tool for understanding compound growth without needing complex calculations. This rule states that you can estimate how long it takes for an investment to double by dividing 72 by the annual interest rate. If your investments earn 6% annually, they'll double approximately every 12 years. At 8%, they'll double every 9 years. At 12%, they'll double every 6 years. Using this rule, you can quickly visualize the long-term impact of different investment returns and time horizons. Sarah's investments, earning 8% annually, doubled approximately every 9 years. Starting at age 25, her money doubled at ages 34, 43, 52, and 61. Four doublings over 40 years created exponential growth that far exceeded her actual contributions. The rule of 72 also works in reverse for debt, showing how quickly high-interest obligations can spiral out of control. Credit card debt at 24% interest doubles every 3 years if only minimum payments are made. A $5,000 balance becomes $10,000 in 3 years, $20,000 in 6 years, and $40,000 in 9 years. Understanding this reverse compounding effect motivates people to prioritize debt elimination, especially high-interest consumer debt. This mathematical reality explains why wealthy people think differently about money and time. They understand that every dollar has the potential to become multiple dollars through compound growth, and this understanding influences every financial decision they make. That expensive dinner isn't just costing them $100 tonight. It's potentially costing them several $100s in lost investment growth over the coming decades. The wealthy also understand that compound interest requires consistency and patience to work effectively. You can't invest sporadically and expect exponential results. You can't panic and sell during market downturns without destroying the compounding process. Building wealth through compound interest requires developing the discipline to invest regularly regardless of market conditions, economic uncertainty, or temporary financial pressures. This is where most people fail at wealth building, and it's not because they don't understand the math. They fail because they've never developed the behavioral patterns and psychological frameworks necessary to stick with long-term financial strategies. Schools could teach these behavioral concepts alongside the mathematical principles, helping students develop both the knowledge and the mindset required for financial success. Understanding compound interest is just the beginning. The next concept that should have been drilled into every student's head is the critical importance of emergency funds. And I'm not talking about the $50 you keep hidden in your sock drawer. I'm talking about a systematic approach to building financial security that most adults completely ignore until disaster strikes. Here's something that will probably make you uncomfortable. Over 20% of Americans have absolutely no emergency savings. None. $0 set aside for unexpected expenses. When their car breaks down, when they need emergency medical care, when they lose their job, they have no financial cushion whatsoever. They immediately turn to credit cards, personal loans, or borrowing money from family members, creating debt that often takes years to eliminate. The people who do have emergency savings rarely have enough. Financial experts recommend keeping 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in an easily accessible account, but most people treat this like an impossible goal rather than a fundamental requirement for financial stability. They'll spend months researching the perfect smartphone or debating which streaming services to subscribe to, but they won't take a single afternoon to calculate how much money they need for emergencies. Let me walk you through exactly how to determine your emergency fund target, because this is something you can figure out in about 15 minutes with basic math. Start by listing every expense you literally cannot live without. Housing costs including rent or mortgage payments, utilities, basic food expenses, transportation costs, insurance premiums, minimum debt payments, and essential healthcare expenses. Add these up to get your monthly survival budget. Notice what's not on that list. Dining out at restaurants, entertainment subscriptions, gym memberships, coffee shop visits, and impulse purchases. These might feel necessary when you're enjoying them, but they're luxuries you can eliminate during financial emergencies. The goal is determining the absolute minimum amount you need to survive each month, not the amount required to maintain your current lifestyle. Once you know your monthly survival number, multiply by 3 for a basic emergency fund or by 6 for a more robust safety net. If your essential monthly expenses are $3,000, you need between $9,000 and $18,000 in emergency savings. That might sound overwhelming if you're currently living paycheck to paycheck, but remember that you're not trying to save this amount overnight. The psychological impact of having emergency savings extends far beyond the actual money in the account. When you know you can handle unexpected expenses without going into debt, you make better decisions in every area of your life. You're more willing to negotiate salary increases because you're not desperate to keep your current job. You can afford to be selective about employment opportunities instead of accepting the first offer that comes along. You sleep better at night because you're not constantly worried about financial disasters. Emergency funds also prevent you from making terrible financial decisions during crisis situations. Without savings, people often cash out retirement accounts early, paying massive penalties and taxes while destroying decades of compound growth. They max out credit cards at outrageous interest rates. They take payday loans or title loans with predatory terms that trap them in cycles of debt. These desperate decisions often cause more long-term financial damage than the original emergency. Building an emergency fund requires treating it like any other essential bill. Set up automatic transfers that move money from your checking account to a separate high-yield savings account on the same day each month. Start small if necessary, maybe $50 or $100 per month, but make it automatic and consistent. Don't rely on willpower or remembering to transfer money manually, because that approach fails the moment you get busy or stressed. The next financial concept that schools completely ignore is credit scores, which function as your financial reputation in our modern economy. Your credit score affects your ability to rent apartments, buy cars, get mortgages, and sometimes even qualify for certain jobs. Yet most people graduate from high school with zero understanding of how credit scoring works or why it matters for their financial future. Credit scoring systems analyze 5 main factors when determining your score. Payment history carries the most weight at 35% of your total score. This measures whether you pay bills on time, how often you miss payments, and how recently any missed payments occurred. The mathematical reality is brutal but simple. Making 97% of your payments on time, which would earn you an excellent grade in school, can seriously damage your credit score. The second most important factor is credit utilization, which represents 30% of your score. This measures how much of your available credit you're actually using across all accounts. If you have credit cards with $10,000 in total limits and you're carrying $3,000 in balances, your utilization rate is 30%. Most experts recommend keeping utilization below 10% for optimal credit scores, though staying under 30% is generally acceptable. Length of credit history accounts for 15% of your score, which is why closing old credit cards often hurts your credit even when you're trying to be responsible. The average age of all your accounts matters, so closing your oldest account can significantly reduce this component of your score. This is particularly important for young adults who might be tempted to close their first credit card once they qualify for better products. Credit mix represents 10% of your score and measures your ability to handle different types of credit responsibly. Having a combination of credit cards, installment loans, and mortgages demonstrates that you can manage various forms of debt. Finally, new credit inquiries make up the remaining 10%, which is why applying for multiple credit cards or loans in a short period can temporarily lower your score. Understanding these factors allows you to optimize your credit score systematically, rather than hoping it improves through random good behavior. Pay all bills on time without exception. Keep credit card balances low relative to available limits. Avoid closing old accounts unless absolutely necessary, and be strategic about applying for new credit. These aren't complex strategies that require advanced financial knowledge, but most people learn them through trial and error rather than proper education. Here's where credit education becomes particularly important for young adults. Building excellent credit takes time, which means starting early provides compound benefits similar to investing. Someone who begins building credit responsibly at 18 will have significantly better credit options at 25 compared to someone who ignores credit until their mid-20s. The difference in mortgage rates alone can save tens of thousands of dollars over the life of a home loan. Credit cards, when used properly, become powerful financial tools rather than dangerous debt traps. They provide purchase protection, rewards programs, and the ability to build credit history while actually earning money through cashback or travel benefits. But using credit cards effectively requires understanding the difference between using credit and carrying debt. The fundamental rule is simple but apparently not obvious to most people. Charge only what you can afford to pay off completely when the bill arrives. Treat your credit card like a debit card that provides rewards and protection benefits. Never carry a balance unless you're facing a genuine emergency and have no other options. Credit card interest rates often exceed 20% annually, which means any balance you carry is costing you more than most investments can realistically earn. This brings us to debt management strategies that can dramatically accelerate your path to financial freedom. Most people approach debt elimination haphazardly, making minimum payments on everything without any strategic plan for becoming debt-free. They might occasionally throw extra money at random debts when they feel motivated, but they lack systematic approaches that optimize their efforts. 2 primary strategies dominate effective debt elimination. The debt snowball method prioritizes paying off the smallest balances first, regardless of interest rates. This approach provides quick psychological victories that maintain motivation throughout the debt elimination process. The debt avalanche method focuses on eliminating the highest interest rate debts first, which minimizes the total amount of interest paid over time. Both methods work if you stick with them consistently, but they appeal to different personality types and financial situations. The snowball method is particularly effective for people who need regular encouragement and visible progress to maintain motivation. Eliminating smaller debts quickly creates momentum and builds confidence in your ability to become debt-free. The avalanche method appeals to people who are motivated by mathematical optimization and want to minimize the total cost of debt elimination. This approach typically saves more money in interest charges and shortens the overall timeline for becoming debt-free, especially when there are significant differences in interest rates across various debts. The choice between methods matters less than consistently executing whichever approach you select. Don't switch strategies halfway through the process. Don't skip months when money gets tight. And don't use debt elimination as an excuse to avoid building emergency savings simultaneously. The goal is creating sustainable financial habits that continue serving you long after you become debt-free. Here's something crucial that most debt elimination advice completely misses. The behaviors and mindset that got you into debt will get you back into debt unless you fundamentally change how you think about money and spending. You can pay off $20,000 in credit card debt, but if you haven't addressed the underlying financial behaviors that created that debt, you'll likely accumulate new debt within a few years. This is why debt elimination should always be paired with building emergency savings, even if progress feels slower than focusing exclusively on debt payments. Emergency funds prevent you from accumulating new debt when unexpected expenses arise. They provide the financial cushion necessary to stick with your debt elimination plan even when life gets expensive or unpredictable. The most insidious part about debt is how it rewires your brain to accept financial mediocrity as normal. You start making decisions based on monthly payment amounts rather than total costs. That $30,000 car doesn't feel expensive when it's only $500 per month. The furniture store's 0% financing for 12 months seems like free money. You begin measuring affordability by whether you can squeeze another payment into your monthly budget rather than whether you actually need the item or can afford to buy it outright. This payment mentality keeps people trapped in cycles of debt for decades because they never build actual wealth. Every dollar they earn gets immediately allocated to payments for things they bought months or years ago. They're constantly living in the past financially, paying for yesterday's decisions while making today's choices based on whatever cash flow remains after servicing their existing obligations. Breaking free from this cycle requires understanding the true cost of financing everything you buy. That $500 monthly car payment doesn't just represent $6,000 per year. It represents $6,000 that could have been invested annually, potentially growing to hundreds of thousands of dollars over your working career. The opportunity cost of debt extends far beyond the interest charges you see on your monthly statements. This is where understanding the mathematics of debt becomes absolutely critical for your financial future. High-interest debt compounds against you with the same mathematical force that investment returns compound in your favor. A credit card balance of $5,000 at 24% interest will double to $10,000 in 3 years if you only make minimum payments. That same $5,000 invested at 8% annual returns would also double, but it would be working for you instead of against you. The psychological weight of debt extends into every area of your life in ways that most people don't fully recognize until they become debt-free. Debt payments limit your career options because you can't afford to take risks or pursue opportunities that might temporarily reduce your income. You stay in jobs you hate because you need the steady paycheck to service your obligations. You avoid entrepreneurial ventures that could dramatically increase your earning potential because you can't handle any disruption to your debt payment schedule. Debt also affects your relationships and family decisions. Couples argue about money more than any other topic, and debt amplifies these conflicts exponentially. You might delay having children because you can't afford the additional expenses while managing existing debt payments. You avoid social activities because your budget is consumed by obligations rather than choices. The stress of debt creates health problems that generate additional medical expenses, creating a vicious cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to escape. Here's what makes debt elimination so challenging for most people, and it's not what financial advisors typically focus on. The hardest part isn't finding extra money to throw at balances or choosing between snowball and avalanche strategies. The hardest part is changing the spending behaviors and psychological patterns that created the debt in the first place. You can eliminate $20,000 in credit card debt through discipline and sacrifice, but if you haven't fundamentally altered your relationship with money, you'll accumulate new debt within a few years. This is why successful debt elimination requires addressing both the mathematical and behavioral aspects of the problem simultaneously. You need strategies for paying off existing balances efficiently, but you also need systems for preventing new debt accumulation exclusively on the payulation. Most people focus off strategies while ignoring the prevention systems, which explains why so many individuals find themselves trapped in recurring cycles of debt elimination and accumulation. The prevention side requires building what I call financial immune systems that protect you from making debt-funded purchases during moments of weakness or crisis. Emergency funds serve as your first line of defense, providing cash reserves for unexpected expenses that might otherwise force you onto credit cards. Automatic savings systems remove money from your checking account before you have opportunities to spend it impulsively. But the most powerful prevention strategy involves changing how you think about purchases before you make them. Instead of asking whether you can afford the monthly payment, start asking whether you can afford to pay cash. If you can't buy something outright, you probably can't actually afford it regardless of what financing options are available. This single shift in perspective will prevent more financial problems than any budgeting system or debt elimination strategy. Consider the real-world impact of this mindset change through a practical example. Jennifer wants to upgrade her kitchen and receives quotes ranging from $15,000 to $30,000 for the renovation. Using payment-focused thinking, she calculates that a $25,000 renovation would cost about $400 monthly over 7 years with financing. This feels manageable within her budget, so she moves forward with the project. However, using cash-focused thinking, Jennifer realizes she would need to save $25,000 before starting the renovation. At her current savings rate of $300 monthly, this would take over 6 years. This timeline forces her to reconsider whether the kitchen upgrade is truly necessary, or if she could achieve similar results with a smaller budget renovation that she could fund with cash in 2 years. The cash-focused approach leads Jennifer to research alternative solutions, learn basic renovation skills, and prioritize the most impactful improvements. She ultimately completes a beautiful kitchen makeover for $8,000 paid in cash, avoiding years of debt payments while achieving her desired outcome. More importantly, the process of saving for the renovation builds her confidence in delaying gratification and making strategic financial decisions. This example illustrates why debt elimination education should focus heavily on changing decision-making frameworks rather than just providing mathematical strategies for paying off balances. The mathematical strategies are important, but they're useless if you continue making the same types of purchasing decisions that created debt problems originally. Speaking of mathematical strategies, let's dive into the specific numbers that demonstrate why retirement planning should have been mandatory curriculum starting in middle school. The statistics around retirement savings in America are absolutely terrifying, and they reveal a financial disaster that's approaching like a slow-motion tsunami. Most Americans are completely unprepared for retirement, not because they don't want financial security in their golden years, but because they've never learned the basic mathematics of retirement planning. The median amount that Americans have saved for retirement is $65,000. That sounds like a substantial sum until you realize what it actually means in practical terms. Using the traditional 4% withdrawal rule, $65,000 in retirement savings generates about $2,600 in annual income. That's less than $220 per month to supplement Social Security benefits. Social Security provides an average monthly benefit of approximately $1,550, which equals about $18,600 annually. Combined with the income from median retirement savings, the typical American retiree has access to roughly $21,000 per year in retirement income. Consider whether you could maintain anything resembling your current lifestyle on $21,000 annually, and you'll understand why retirement planning should have been treated as an emergency educational priority. The situation becomes even more alarming when you realize that 25% of Americans have zero retirement savings. None. These individuals are planning to rely entirely on Social Security benefits, assuming the program remains financially viable throughout their retirement years. Even if Social Security continues without changes, $18,000 annually provides an extremely limited standard of living, especially when accounting for healthcare costs that typically increase with age. Here's where the mathematical reality of retirement planning becomes both depressing and inspiring simultaneously. The same compound interest principles that can create enormous wealth over decades can also demonstrate exactly how little you need to save monthly to achieve financial independence, but only if you start early enough to harness the full power of compounding returns. A 25-year-old who invests $300 monthly in a diversified portfolio earning 8% annually will accumulate approximately $1.7 million by age 65. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, this provides about $68,000 in annual retirement income without touching the principal balance. This person can maintain their pre-retirement lifestyle while potentially leaving substantial wealth to their heirs. The same investment strategy started at age 35 results in about $700,000 at retirement, generating roughly $28,000 in annual income. Starting just 10 years later cuts the retirement income by more than half, demonstrating why early financial education is so critical for long-term wealth building. But here's the number that should make every parent demand financial literacy courses in schools. That 25-year-old investing $300 monthly will contribute a total of $144,000 of their own money over 40 years. The remaining $1.6 million comes entirely from compound investment returns. Time and consistent investing create wealth that far exceeds personal contributions, but only when you start early enough for mathematics to work in your favor. The tragedy is that most people learn about retirement planning in their 40s or 50s when the window for effortless wealth building has largely closed. They realize they need to save dramatically larger amounts monthly to achieve similar retirement outcomes, making financial independence feel impossible rather than inevitable. This creates a defeatist attitude where people give up on retirement planning entirely, assuming they'll work until they die or rely on family support during their final years. Understanding retirement planning mathematics also reveals why employer-sponsored retirement plans with matching contributions represent the closest thing to free money that exists in personal finance. When your company offers to match 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary, they're providing an immediate 50% return on your investment before considering any market performance. Most companies structure their matching programs to encourage consistent participation rather than providing lump sum bonuses. They might match 50 cents for every dollar you contribute up to 6% of your salary, or they might provide a full match on the first 3% of contributions, plus 50 cents per dollar on the next 2%. Regardless of the specific formula, employer matching represents guaranteed returns that cannot be replicated through any other investment strategy. Yet millions of American workers leave billions of dollars in matching contributions on the table every year because they don't understand the mathematics or they prioritize other financial goals over retirement savings. They might focus on paying off low-interest debt while ignoring high-return employer matches. They might delay retirement contributions while building emergency funds, not realizing they can often do both simultaneously by adjusting other areas of their budget. The tax advantages of retirement accounts provide additional benefits that compound over decades. Traditional retirement account contributions reduce your current taxable income, providing immediate tax savings that effectively subsidize your retirement savings. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, every dollar you contribute to a traditional retirement account only costs you 78 cents in after-tax income. Roth retirement accounts work differently, but provide equally powerful tax benefits. You contribute after-tax dollars, but all future growth and withdrawals are completely tax-free. This is particularly advantageous for younger workers who expect to be in higher tax brackets during retirement or who want to maximize their tax-free wealth for estate planning purposes. The mathematical differences between traditional and Roth accounts depend on your current tax rate versus your expected retirement tax rate, but both provide substantial advantages over taxable investment accounts. The key insight is that tax-advantaged retirement accounts should be fully utilized before investing in regular brokerage accounts. Yet most people do exactly the opposite because they want access to their money before retirement age. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in all of personal finance, something that wealthy people understand intuitively, but most people never learn. The concept is called opportunity cost, and it's the foundation of every significant financial decision you'll make throughout your life. Opportunity cost represents the value of the best alternative you give up when making any choice. And understanding this concept will transform how you think about spending, saving, and investing. Every time you buy something expensive, you're not just spending money. You're making a choice about your future self that will echo through decades of your financial life. When you finance that $30,000 car instead of buying a reliable $15,000 vehicle with cash, you're not just choosing transportation. You're choosing to give up the potential wealth that $15,000 could have generated through compound growth over the next 20 or 30 years. Let's break down the real mathematics of this decision, because the numbers will probably shock you. That extra $15,000 invested at 8% annual returns becomes $32,000 after 10 years, $65,000 after 20 years, and over $100,000 after 30 years. So that decision to buy the fancier car doesn't just cost you $15,000. It costs you the opportunity to build substantial wealth through investing that difference. This is exactly the type of analysis that wealthy people do automatically in their heads before making major purchases. They don't just ask whether they can afford the monthly payment, they calculate the opportunity cost of every financial decision, weighing immediate gratification against long-term wealth building. Poor financial decisions compound over time just like good investments, but they compound against you rather than for you. The average American household spends over $600 monthly on car payments, insurance, and maintenance for vehicles that depreciate rapidly and provide nothing more than transportation. Over a 40-year period, that's nearly $300,000 spent on cars. Meanwhile, the same household often claims they can't afford to save for retirement because money is too tight. They're literally choosing to destroy wealth through depreciating assets while ignoring opportunities to build wealth through appreciating investments. This pattern repeats across every category of spending where people prioritize lifestyle inflation over wealth accumulation. They upgrade their housing every few years, taking on larger mortgage payments that consume increasing percentages of their income. They finance furniture, electronics, and vacations, spreading the costs across months or years while paying interest charges that compound the total expense. Each decision feels reasonable in isolation, but collectively they create a lifestyle that requires every penny of income just to maintain. Understanding opportunity cost also reveals why building wealth requires saying no to things that seem affordable in the moment. That $5 coffee every morning costs about $1,500 annually, which could become over $100,000 in investment growth over 30 years. The weekly dinner at your favorite restaurant costs $3,000 yearly, representing potential investment growth of over $200,000 by retirement. This doesn't mean you should never enjoy coffee or restaurant meals. It means you should make these choices consciously, understanding what you're trading off when you prioritize current consumption over future wealth. The person who builds substantial wealth makes these trade-offs deliberately, choosing which luxuries matter most while eliminating spending that doesn't provide genuine value or happiness. The concept of opportunity cost extends beyond individual purchases to career decisions, education investments, and major life choices. Taking a higher-paying job in an expensive city might seem financially advantageous, but the increased housing and living costs could actually reduce your savings rate compared to earning less money in a lower-cost area. The opportunity cost analysis includes not just immediate income differences, but long-term wealth-building potential. Similarly, spending $60,000 on graduate school might seem like a smart investment in your earning potential, but the opportunity cost includes both the direct educational expenses and the income you could have earned while working instead of studying. The decision makes financial sense only if the increased lifetime earnings exceed both the direct costs and the opportunity costs of the time and money invested in additional education. Here's where opportunity cost thinking becomes particularly powerful for young adults making decisions about student loans and career paths. Borrowing money for education creates negative compound interest that works against you for years or decades after graduation. Student loan debt at 6% interest doubles every 12 years. So a $30,000 loan becomes $60,000 in 12 years, $120,000 in 24 years, assuming only minimum payments. Meanwhile, the income you could earn by working instead of attending school could be invested immediately, benefiting from decades of compound growth. The person who starts working at 18 and invests aggressively might accumulate more wealth by age 30 than someone who spends 4 years in college and graduates with debt, even if the college graduate earns a higher salary afterward. There you have it. 50 years of financial wisdom that could have been taught in a single high school semester, yet somehow our education system decided that memorizing the dates of ancient battles was more important than understanding compound interest. The math doesn't lie, the strategies aren't complicated, and the opportunity sitting in front of you right now is exactly the same one that wealthy people recognized decades ago. The only question left is whether you're going to close this video and continue making the same financial mistakes that keep most people broke, or if you're actually going to implement what you just learned and start building real wealth today. Your future self is waiting for an answer.